Okay, there's book which called The Art of Thought, and the good thing that it's I found out a version where like a synopsis of chapters. So chapter one, psychology and thought. Men have recently increased their power like over nature without increasing the control of that power by thought. We can we can make war more efficiently, but cannot prevent war. We can explore the world, but cannot contrive interracial world policy. And the same want of like intellectual control exists within like each nation in like politics and art, and we require therefore both like more effective thinking on particular problems and an improved art of thought. So in other words, this book about like old ass book, like 1925 something published, and it's supposed to teach you how to think outside of the box. Okay, let's check out and continue reading. Require therefore both more effective thinking on particular problems and an improved art of thought in which scientific explanation may overtake and guide empirical rules. Okay, here after talking about that, we can do a bunch of stuff, but we not that much controlling our own brain. But in thought, as in like a cookery, science lags behind empiricism, and the study of like modern like psychological textbooks may even hinder effective thinking, and this fact is largely due to the use by psychologists of the so-called mechanist conception of instinct as a power and of a reason as a machine. Again, this fact is largely due to the use by psychologists of the mechanist conception of instinct as a power and of reason as a machine. So I'll not want to talk to you about like different problem solving tips, but he seems like try to get like technicalities in terms of how we actually thinking, and he calling metaphorically our instincts like a power and our like thinking itself as a machine. And some of the best modern psychologists and physiologists, however, opposed to that conception and substitute for it the so-called holomist conception of the human organism as an like imperfectly integrated combination of living elements, each of which retains some initiative of its own, while cooperating with the rest in securing the good of the whole organism. So they, in this kind of collaboration, the aim of the art of thought is an improved coordination of these elements in the process of thought. Okay, it was like a summary of chapter 1, the second one, chapter 2, called consciousness and will. The thinker must also fight against his own common sense conception of consciousness, and will a simple and absolute unities. Consciousness varies from so-called full consciousness to unconsciousness, and from comparatively unified consciousness to co-consciousness. So many fucking consciousness. And the thinker must train himself to observe his less conscious as well as his more conscious psychological experiences. So in other words, when we do stuff but we aware, and when we do something and not that much controlling, I guess that's the point, will also varies from full volition to like non-volition, and from comparatively unified volition to so-called co-volition. The distribution of volitional control over the various factors in our organism is indeed curiously incomplete and arbitrary, so that Plato and others have found difficulty in relating conscious purpose to creative thought. The similarity of the characteristics and limitations of consciousness, will, and organic life has led many thinkers to believe that they may be three different aspects of the same fact. So he arguing about try to find out how many levels of consciousness. So that was chapter 2. So for now it's like not that much super practical thing, just like as usually in any book, the theory. Okay, here's chapter 3, thought before art, not fart. Okay, the art of thought is a modification by conscious effort for so-called natural form of human behavior. In a civilized adult, it is very difficult to observe mental behavior apart from acquired habit. But if we make necessarily a rough distinction between nature and acquirement, we find that the main so-called natural process which the art of thought attempts to modify is the association of ideas, which Aristotle and Hobbes observed by examining the memory of past association trains. Why not taxi? Okay, and Verendonck and others by the more difficult but more like a fruitful method of examining association trains during their occurrence. So in other words, I guess the point is the way how we remember things by associating with something. And that's another thing that I remember, that the way to remember something better if you associate with something, like connecting the dots which you already know. Verendonck emphasizes the rising and fallings of consciousness which accompany the natural association trains, and describes the so-called dialogue form, which results from automatic mental attempts to solve psychological situations. He correlated like rising and falling consciousness with rising and falling rationality. Yeah, that's interesting. Like how consciousness, it's not like our heart, like it's not like 24/7 thinking, because it's the brain in general requires more energy, and that's why it's way easier to do things like on autopilot, and less successfully with the use of verbal and visual imagery. Veronding's evidence is influenced by the fact that all his observations took place while he was falling asleep, and also like that of Poincaré by an oversimplified so-called mechanist theory of the relation between thought and instinctive emotion. So I guess they try to understand how basically logic and emotions working in our brain, but the thinker, from the record of such observations and from his own introspection, can make for himself a working conception of that natural association process, which his art is to modify. Okay, many fancy words, and again, I guess it's still about like a theoretical thing, which is could be of course useful, but I try to find for you guys and for me practical things, not just like sounds nice, but also okay, I know this, I can do this, Okay, chapter 4, stages of control. At what stages in the association process should the thinker bring the conscious effort of his art to bear? If we examine a single achievement of thought, we can distinguish 4 stages. Okay, this one already better, 4 stages of thinking. Okay, the first, preparation. Second, incubation. Seems like they talk about how chicken laying eggs. And third, illumination. Sounds like something with aliens. And it's accompaniments. What the fuck is that? And a verification. So kind of again metaphorical, looks like the idea literally like a born baby, preparation. I guess it's I don't know, some brain cell fucking each other, and after they cannot connecting the dots, and here we go, we get idea. And at the preparation stage, we can consciously accumulate knowledge, divide up by logical rules, the field of inquiry, and adopt a definite problem attitude. In verification, we can consciously follow out rules those used in preparation. Verification, I guess it's like when we using like critical thinking and filtering, is it like bullshit or not? And at the incubation stage, we can consciously arrange either to think on other subjects than the proposed problem, or to rest from any form of conscious thought. And this second form of incubation is often necessary, for the severer types of intellectual production, which would be hindered, either by interruption or by continuous passive reading. If we consciously to control the illumination stage, we must include in it the fringe conscious psychological events which precede and accompany the flash of illumination. I guess flash, it's like when we have idea, and which may be might be called intimation. Okay, I like the way how you're describing things. A little bit many academic terms, but okay. We can to some degree control illumination by making ourselves conscious, as made poets conscious of intimation, and by both encouraging the psychological processes which intimation shows to be occurring, and protecting them from interruption. Okay, chapter 5, thought and emotion. A difficulty in the voluntary control of thought arises from the elusive character of so-called emotion or affect. Sensation and imagery are less elusive than emotion, and poets and artists have attempted to retain their emotions by associating them with images or of sensation. On the other hand, emotions can call out ideas, and nations have sometimes to choose between vernacular language whose emotional associations may provide intellectual stimulus, and a more exact literary language with a fewer emotional associations. The intellectual influence of certain emotions, such as humor and a sympathy, can best be appreciated by considering them separately. In poetic creation, one of the strongest intellectual influences comes from the emotion of significance. A century ago, the problem of the relation between thought and emotional association was discussed by using the terms of reason and imagination. And Shelley described his personal intellectual development from reason, which attempted 2 inhibit emotion to imagination, which used the whole content of consciousness and as a guide both to truth and to human values. I mean, it's many fucking, again, complicated, like academic terms, but if I get this shit right, after talking about that thinking could be used for imagination, I mean, duh. Chapter 6, Thought and Habit. All mental activities beside their immediate effects in the production of thought have later effects in the production of mental habits. And it is sometimes convenient to consider the activity as means and the a habit as end. A regular time stimulus is useful as producing the habit of warming up, and maybe combined with the stimulus of a place or a circumstance of the muscular movements of fingers or lips. But we should not become the slaves of habit. The best administrators of an attempt to get a fresh point of intellectual departure by breaking their own mental habits. And those who have to work to a timetable should systematically watch and record their unhabitual fringe thoughts. Such thoughts will often come at moments outside the working day, and it's especially important for the social thinker to observe and select them during newspaper reading. Mental habits should vary with the natural powers, the age, and the subjects of study of the thinker, and the management of habit is especially important for thinkers who are teachers or journalists. The daily conflict between the stimulus of habit keeping and that of habit breaking is only part of a larger problem of regularity and adventure in the life of a creative thinker. The next one, chapter 7, Effort and Energy. Further analysis is required of the facts behind our use in psychology of such words as so-called effort or energy and ease. Creative artists often describe their moments of a greatest intellectual energy as being without effort, but the artist himself cannot always tell whether the absence of effort means an increase or a decline of energy, especially in those cases where mental activity, which originally required severe effort, has become habitual. Spencer describes a habit of relaxed mental energy and made a habit by which he constantly renewed his mental energy. But efforts vary not only in intensity, but also in the character of their stroke. And many men have wasted their efforts because they never discovered the right stroke for their work. I guess also talking about like finding your own like a workflow. Sometimes the effective stimulation of mental energy depends on the relationship, on the relation between thought and emotion. Extreme emotion may, however, weaken thought, or the emotional like factors in our like organism may fail to respond to a like intellectual call for energy. Some thinkers have like advocated the production of like organic harmony by the like general organic relaxation of like a power through repose. But the purpose of thought is not like organic harmony but truth, and the seeker for truth must always be prepared to sacrifice harmony. The harmony resulting from action is more effective for the production of energy than the harmony of repose. But if it is too heightened, like intellectual energy must be relevant to our purpose and to those like conditions outside ourselves on which the fulfillment of our purpose depends. The like energy of which the psychologist speaks is an like empirical fact of like introspection. It may sound like it may someday be related to the measurable energy of the like a psychist and the psychologist. Chapter 8: Types of Thought. Certain ways of using the mind and like the mind a characteristic of nations, professions, and like other human groups. Some of these are the like unconscious results of like environment, and others have been like consciously invented, and others due to combination of invention and environment. The French and like English nations have acquired different like mental habits and ideals, which like they indicate respectively by the word logic and the phrase muddling through. Each habit has advantages and dangers, and it may be hoped that a new habit will someday be developed, which will combine both advantages and avoid both dangers. It is less easy to detect an American type of thought. The indications that are more elastic and like effective mental habits may be developing in America than is found like elsewhere, but that habit cannot yet be called like the national type. The pioneer habit mind is like perhaps more like prevalent in America than any other single type, but it seems like to be like rapidly dissolving like under the influence of like industrial development, religious change, and the spread of popular interest in psychology. A new standard of intellectual energy may ultimately come to be accepted in America, accompanied by a new a moral standard in the conduct of the mind, and a new popular appreciation of the more difficult forms of intellectual effort. Okay, here chapter 9, Dissociation of Consciousness. The history of the art of thought has been greatly influenced by the invention of methods of producing the phenomena of so-called dissociated consciousness. The simplest and most ancient of these are the methods of producing a hypnotic trance by the monotonous repetition of nervous stimuli. So I guess it's author talking about repeating the same words. I guess it's even more relevant to religion. Such methods have important and sometimes beneficial effects on the function of the lower nervous system. Oh, that's interesting. And a slight degree of dissociation may assist some of the higher thought process. But the evidence seems to indicate that the best intellectual and artistic work is not done by in a condition of a serious dissociation. Dissociation, however, often produces intense intellectual conviction. Interesting. And the future of religion, here we go, and philosophy in both the West and East depends largely on the conditions under which that conviction is accepted as valid. In a Western Christianity, methods of meditation have been invented especially by Saint Ignatius, which intended to avoid the dangers of a mere dissociation. But the process of direction of the association trains of ideas and emotions by an effort of a will is so difficult that it constantly results in the production of the same state of dissociation as that produced by the earlier and more a direct experience of self, hypnotism. And since dissociation remains the most effective means of producing intellectual conviction, so I'll talk about basically that the geniuses of the world become ironically getting their ideas not exactly when they totally Yes, of course, they're spending their they grinding on their project, but ironically, they getting like insight moments when they having a rest time. I don't know, take a walk or something like that, and that's the way of like author talking about dissociation. And since the dissociation remains the most effective means of producing intellectual conviction by an act of will, those who now desire to practice the will to believe still thrown back on the old problem of the validity of conviction produced by dissociative methods. So, again, ironically, yes, you have to spend time to learn the problem, like try to figure out the way or how to solve it, but also you have to take pause, I don't know, distract yourself with something else, because that's also the process of getting insight idea how to, for example, to solve some problem. Okay, the next chapter 10, the thinker at school. The discipline of the art of thought should begin at an age when the choice of intellectual methods must be mainly made not by by the student, but by teachers and administrators. And if Plato, that philosopher name, were born in London or New York, how could we help him to become a thinker? He would be like a self-active organism, living and growing in an environment far less stimulating than that of ancient Athens, and unable to discover for himself the best ways of using his mind. In other words, how intensely you should use your brain, in other words, also depends, of course, the place where you're born. I guess the point is, if you was born in a fucked up place, you gotta use your brain way harder. His education should involve compromise between his powers as a child and his needs as a future adult, and he should acquire a steadily increasing experience of mental effort and fatigue, and of the energy which results from the right kind of effort. He will need periodical leisure with its opportunities and dangers. The present experimental schools in which students left to acquire thought methods by their own a trial and error have not always been successful, and the individual hints of a clever teacher as to mental method often fail, and it may therefore be hoped that a knowledge of the outlines of the psychology of thought may become recognized part of the school and college curriculum. Experimental evidence already exists as to the of such knowledge in improving the mental technique of a student. Okay, he, like, as we can see, talking about all the practical things, how to improve thinking at school. Chapter 11, public education. In the case of like a 4/5 of the inhabitants of a modern industrial community, inventions of educational method will only increase the output of thought insofar as they are actually brought to bear on the potential thinker by the administrative machinery of public education, and that machinery is everywhere new and was originally based on an over simple conception of the problem. In England, we're slowly realizing the necessity of few things. First of all, of making more complex provision for the so-called average student, and second, of providing a special treatment for the subnormal or supernormal student. Subnormal. I like the way how they calling stupid people. Or you can call, I guess, sub-smart. Okay, differential public education for this supernormal working class child had to wait for the invention of a technique of mental diagnosis, and only began in England at the end of the 19th century. And the system is still insufficiently developed, and there's a serious danger that an extension of the age of compulsion in its present form many lessen the productivity of the most super normal minds. If this danger is to be avoided, we must reconsider our present compulsory system with a presumption in favor of liberty and variety. American experience shows the intellectual disadvantages involved in the compulsory enforcement of anything uniform system of secondary education. Okay, honestly, I don't see anything useful in this chapter. Okay, chapter 13. Teaching and doing. The proposal to raise the age of education compulsion is often combined in England with the scheme that to make teaching a law, and medicine a close a self-government profession with a monopoly of public service. And that scheme involves a serious dangers to the intellectual life of the community, and especially to the training of potential skilled thinkers. And it ignores not only the a possible opposition of interest between the consumers and the producers of education, but also the demarcation problem between the producers of education and the producers of thought. This oversimplification of the problem is partly due to the fact that those engaged in more general forms of intellectual production are not organized and don't claim, as other professions claim, a part in the training for their profession. And experience shows that the teaching of any function is sterilized if it is separated from doing. In other words, when teaching lacking practice. But the English-speaking democracy is prepared to offer special and expensive educational opportunities to a small minority of future professional thinkers. Perhaps some, local authority might be induced if, legislation closing the teaching profession did not, meanwhile, make it impossible to start an experimental school, for students from all social classes who belong to the highest 1% in respect of intellectual supernormality, and who ask to be prepared for a career of professed thought. The staff of school would be chosen to keep in touch with intellectual work outside the school.